Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Cybersecurity. I'm Dr. Mansur Hasib, and this evening, my very first guest is Tariq Azmi. Tariq, please introduce yourself and say hello.
Hi, Dr. Hasib. Good to be here. My name is Tariq Azmi. I am in Kansas, and just to give a little bit background about me, I have been in the technology field for almost 20 years now. Finished my degree in 2000 in computer sciences and such, and have been in that field. And during the layoffs in 2007 and 8, I started looking, and I ended up working for the Kansas Bureau of Investigations, which is the law enforcement agency for the state of Kansas. And that's where I had a little bit more exposure to cybersecurity, forensics, and was able to see some of how that's done. And that was my start. Then after that, I worked for some MSPs locally here, and I met my business partner Jonathan. And Jonathan is comes from a compliance background, and his expertise is HIPAA compliance. And when we were working together at the previous company, we realized both of our backgrounds are not being fully utilized. And we said, how about we start our company and focus on compliance industries? So we have a company called Ember Technology, and our primary target started out to be all the healthcare clients, where we did all the compliances for them, mainly HIPAA. And as the time went on, we went into some banking financials for the SOC compliances, and the what is the Graham Leach Bliley compliance.
Mhm.
And now the newest thing that is has been taking up a lot of our time and focus is the CMMC,
Mm,
which is the cybersecurity maturity model for manufacturing.
mm.
That has been, of course, in the coming in the pipeline. So we have been preparing for it. We hope to be the certifying authority as well. So we're working on those things. So that has put us in right in the middle of all the compliances. And we figured we stay with it because cybersecurity, as you know it and you've taught it, as big as it is, it can go in many different places. So we stuck with compliances industries and we're working through that. So that's my background.
That is wonderful. What a wonderful background. And you are busy. I did not realize that you were a Toastmaster and a cybersecurity professional and all of that combined
Yes.
and a business person. This is absolutely wonderful. Well, welcome. So, what questions and what topics do you want to talk about, Tariq?
Uh, I think I've watched this video, and you may have known it as well on Netflix, about the social dilemma. And that talks a lot about not just the cybersecurity aspect of it, but we as humans in the world of internet and
Hmm.
how our devices hold the information that we have.
Hmm.
For example, and I talk about this quite often whenever I'm asked to, I tell them 99% of the people in the audience, you guys have never read any agreement on the phone or downloading the games.
Hmm.
And here you are playing a game, doing your banking, doing your work emails, you're doing all these various things. Do you really know how secure you are? And I try to talk more about this, but it seems like it's a convenience factor. People forget.
Hmm.
And I think this is where I was hoping you could shed some light on that and probably some pointers as to how we can educate more of our lives in this cyber world.
Hmm. So, do you have any suggestions along those lines?
Well, so my comment when I do any of these talk, all I say is I end with my speech or presentation. I say, uh, you guys, I said, not you, every one of us is leaving our front door open and letting people walk through our bedrooms to kitchen to where you pay your bills, and that is what your device does. But you take precautions when you leave the house. You lock the door, you set the alarm,
Mhm.
but on the flip side, we need to focus a little bit more on that phone. And more than anything, people always go, you're saying as if I shouldn't be using my phone. That's the reaction. But
Mhm.
I'm not sure how to take the next step after that, talking about saying, I have shared with you what these phones do, what the agreements have in them, talking about, periodically does the scanning to see which app you're using more and which you're not for their marketing purposes. And people don't, a lot of times, just don't see the seriousness of it. I don't know what's the next step I should take to say, protect yourself, guard yourself with all these, uh, yourself essentially out in the public, out in the cyber world. I really, I mean, after saying this, I think there should be more. And I don't know where that conversation should go after.
Well, my opinion on that one is that we really need more user education training on the usage of the devices. So
Mhm.
you may have heard some of my conversations,
Yes,
even when I was CIO and I was implementing all these things for companies. I
right.
spent a lot of time educating the people in the proper use of all the tools that they will use for their productivity. Unfortunately, we don't do that. To
Mhm.
give you a similar example is like a car. We actually have done some regulations around cars, for example, because cars are not only dangerous to yourself, but they're also dangerous to others. So what we have
Mhm.
done is we have created some rules and regulations. We require people to take training. We give people a license, and periodically we enforce the laws, rules, and regulations. But I don't think we've done that with technology because we haven't seen that in that same way because it seems like the harm on the technology is to themselves, but in reality, it is not just to themselves because it is to others also. For example, there is a social cost. If a credit card company or any company experiences a loss, well, that loss is actually passed on to the customers in some way in terms of a higher price and all that. So there is a social cost. I do believe that we are still a long way off in doing better in this realm. That's my personal opinion.
Sure. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think the kind of, in a way, it takes it to when you use the example of the car, there has to be some training. You're absolutely right. Or having a seatbelt. Does it have, nowadays, we have airbags
Right,
for protection for both parties. So I think that's a great example that you pointed out.
right.
I, I I think it's the convenience factor that I think people, a lot of us, I mean, sometimes I, including myself, don't think through that process.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's really, I don't know where the next step is.
Well, similar to the car, if we take the analogy of the car, remember that the car manufacturers were required to do certain things. That level of requirement still isn't there. So you have now started in that realm with your CMMI effort
Right, right.
with companies, but that same thing also has to happen with the technologies,
Hmm.
the Internet of Things, all those devices. Many of these devices do not even have the basic tools that you might need. Like you talked about the seat belt. Well, they
Yep.
probably don't have a seat belt. They probably
Mhm.
don't have all airbags or all those kinds of similar gizmos to protect people. And nor do they have warning signs and things like that. So it's a big problem. This area is a huge problem, and I believe that we need much more regulation, legislation, all of those things to make sure that when you put out a product for public consumption, that it should meet certain standards. I mean, we have FDA standards of food. Well, technology has literally become just as important as food for our lives.
Yes, yes,
So
absolutely,
why
yeah,
aren't we making sure that the food that or the technology that people are being forced to consume, because there's no other way, right?
correct, 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 yeah.
So why aren't we enforcing some common levels of standards? Look, we're doing that in terms of insurance. We're doing that in many, many places. We have minimum standards, but we don't have minimum standards in terms of technology yet.
Right, right. And I think I'm sure you're familiar, and a lot of the viewers that you have, we, being that we're in the compliance industry, we are so focused, and we see as many as the ransomwares that has happened over the course of time, especially last year, or how many hospitals had that challenges. And there was recently, as recent as 3 months ago, the patient is suing the hospital because they had a ransomware attack.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge they had with it was the hospital had a ransomware attack, so they could not take patients.
Mm-hmm.
And this patient was being transported in the ambulance, and he had to be returned
Mm-hmm.
from that hospital, redirected to another hospital, which was 45 minutes far,
Mm-hmm.
which was really kept the person's life in danger. And again, even though some of these compliances are in place, I think user education is really, I always feel it comes back to the users. We need to be aware. We need to uh, focus on it.
True, but now you have moved to another realm, though. When you're talking about hospitals or healthcare and those kinds of areas, now you're talking about organizational level of
Mm-hmm.
leadership and governance and things like that.
Right.
Well, in the healthcare sector, if you have worked in that sector, my study shows that 50% of US healthcare companies are being led by chief financial officers. Their entire cybersecurity technology, all of these things are led by chief financial officers. As a matter of fact, very recently there was a another situation with another hospital, and I looked at the org chart and same issue. The
Yeah.
CIO reports to the CFO. So I'm like,
Yep.
okay, that is never going to work. I mean, that's like the CIO's job is always forward thinking.
Mm-hmm.
CFO's job is
Yep.
reduce expenses.
Yes. Yes.
Those two
Definitely.
are should never be reporting to each other. If anybody should be reporting to anybody, it should be the CFO reporting to the CIO, because the CIO should be driving the digital strategy for the organization. Now we have the money driving the strategy, which never works.
Correct. Absolutely. I think on that similar note, I all over the place with this, but one of the things that we did and the success we had in our business was we tried to talk more about operations. We said a lot of companies come in and talk to you about cybersecurity. They'll talk to you about managed services. We will manage this department or this.
Hmm.
So our approach completely changed in our business. And what we said is, let's not worry about technology. Let's not even talk about technology. I'm here to understand your operations. Let's
Nice.
talk about your operations. Then we say, let's talk about your 1 year goal, 5 year goals. Then we say, okay, let's strategize again on it. And we have our model said compliance is part of it, but technology should work for you like you turn the flip the switch and the light comes on. Therefore, if you keep operation as the forefront,
Mm-hmm.
and that technology is you should be used as a tool is for us. That's the mantra we have done for the last 2.5 years, and I think it's slowly come into place in the picture and understanding of it.
That's a beautiful model because that is similar to my thinking. This
Mhm.
is one of the reasons I have never worked like a consultant where I go and I tell you and I put on my wizard hat and I tell you what to do and
Right,
you go away and do it. No, no.
right,
I teach people how to do it right.
sure,
You
sure.
see, I
No, absolutely, yeah,
there's CIO, CEO, but you are actually doing that as a business partner. You're also still enabling them. That's a great model. I wish
yeah.
more people would do that.
Yeah, and I think so. What we essentially did is transition to saying we are not a managed service provider. We
Mm,
are a technology operations partner. It's
Mm.
slightly different. So we always say, think about the idea of if somebody's computer's taking 3 minutes to log in every day, calculate that 5 days, lunch break, and all these things, the person is sitting there for 20 minutes every day and you're
Yep.
losing it. Therefore, I think when it comes to technology, I think there's a lot needs to happen in many ways.
Hmm.
That at least that's my take, and
Hmm.
I think you gave me some good pointers as well for the conversation to move forward. But yeah, this is great.
No, but that is fantastic because you are really looking at the business enablement side than anything else, which is what I was doing my entire career. Like people sometimes think of me as a cybersecurity professional or a security professional, and they equate the two words. And I'm like, cybersecurity to me is business enablement, mission driver. Security, I don't even know what security is. I've never practiced security.
Right,
That aspect was a given to me. If the
right,
business cannot succeed, nothing else matters, right? So you
right.
seem like doing it that way. That is a fantastic model.
And I think one of the things I'll wrap up soon here, but
Mhm.
what I tell people is cybersecurity is not a technology thing. And with what your new book says, think of cybersecurity and security as your personal brand. It has to match the marketing. And I stole that from you. Just I'm using yours and preaching to people saying cybersecurity. Don't think it's technical. It is your brand. It is. People talk about cybersecurity and say Target had a breach, and it's a brand image of Target that happened. So that's sort of how I've started talking a little bit more about it. But I'm glad I came across your book and learned a few tricks there.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful because that's exactly what I also
Yeah,
tell people
yeah,
that this whole thing, and not only brand, but it's also should be your distinguishing
mhm,
factor, right? It should be one of the ways you distinguish yourself.
correct,
It should be a
correct. So,
competitive
yep,
edge for you.
yes, yes.
That is fantastic, Tariq. I really enjoyed meeting you and
Like,
talking with you and learning a little bit about you. And we
yes,
will
sir.
chat again in the
Absolutely.
networking. But in the meantime, I am now going to bring in my next guest, Angelina Sims. Thank you, Tariq.
Thanks.
Hello, Dr. Hasib. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Welcome. Introduce yourself and say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angelina Sims. I am in the Philadelphia area. I attend Immaculata University studying information systems and cybersecurity. And in my studies, one day on a break, I was looking to learn more about cybersecurity. And that's how I came across Dr. Hipsey's book. And I learned that there's so much more about cybersecurity than the actual security factor. And reaching out to him through LinkedIn helped me learn more about different directions I could take in my career path. So I learned from the book, from Dr. Hipsey's book about cybersecurity, that it can involve education, healthcare, and and I'm using those avenues to help advocate for those with special needs and disabilities because they use technology and I want to be of service to them.
Wow.
And yes, and like Tariq and Dr. Hasib, I'm also a Toastmaster. And recently I had the pleasure of reading Dr. Hipsey's book about personal branding. And as an honor and thank you for your mentorship through Toastmasters, I would like to focus a lot of my questions this evening on your book, your brand
Oh,
book.
wonderful. Yes, this is so wonderful. We have so many common things, and I'm so glad that you reached out and we connected and we had this opportunity to work on so many different fronts. So, it's welcome back. You are a returning guest over here. So, this is your second stint on this show. So, what are we going to talk about today, Angelina?
We are going to talk about bringing out your inner greatness.
Wow. And you are already doing that. This is absolutely wonderful. So, let's chat about that.
So, right off the bat, I want to ask you, how has Toastmasters helped you bring out your inner greatness and in the process of writing this new book?
Ah, so you probably saw that I did put a Toastmasters chapter in there. And that was very important because part of my history is that when I was at the nuclear power plant, I joined Toastmasters because that's what everybody said I should be doing. I had no clue what it was, but that's where I learned not only public speaking, but leadership, all the various roles, listening, the art of listening, and then the art of being able to communicate within 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 1 minute and 2 minutes, providing people with valuable information, but also with clarity, getting rid of the ooh, ah, it basically drives me crazy now because I'm trained in that. So every time I watch TV and I hear somebody doing, and I'm like, I don't know. So Toastmasters has been incredibly important for me. And that is part of the reason, if you notice, even when I met you and you expressed this interest of being a leader in this field, one of the things that I encouraged you to do what? Join Toastmasters.
Masters, yes. Yes, that's great. So I want to read a little sample, just a little sample from your book. I don't want to give it all away.
All right.
So in chapter 12, you're talking about one of your mentees, Miss Evans.
Mm-hmm.
And to quote you in the book, you say, just as any normal human being, a mentor will always appreciate non-monetary rewards such as thank you notes, posts, celebratory messages, and pleasant surprises. So when it comes to personal branding and seeing results from your insight and leadership, what growth have you seen in those you've mentored within your field?
Well, I have seen really their blossoming. In some ways, I've also been seeing that in you because the thing is that the inner greatness already exists. I mean, you know that, I know that. What you are showing to us today already existed in you, but what did it take? It took some courage, encouragement, and some mentorship to help you bring that out. If you notice, whatever you are doing is pretty unique. And nobody else has those interests. Nobody has else is built up of all those things. Because if you notice your whole self, because I talk about in any effort bringing your whole self, right? So every one of my mentors has something, and as a mentees, I mean, have something. So as a mentor, what is my job? My job is to see what is that talent that is already there, and then can I help bring that out? And when that person is scared or not confident enough to bring it out, it is my job to give that confidence. And the confidence can only develop through practice, right? As you notice yourself, your own development through Toastmasters, you've been there about 6 months now, I think.
Yeah, just about.
Look at where you are today compared to when you first started. It was that little bit of hesitation, but then you started doing it, and the practice helped you get better and better and better and better. And then now, once you are confident, you can let yourself go. You can start bringing all your other talents, your acting talents, your ability to be expressive about something. So, as we all know, a lot of communication is nonverbal, right? So, being able to communicate with those nonverbal elements, that is also very important. So, these are all things that matter. And those are the things that I started seeing in every one of my mentees, that as they started to blossom, I started to see that inner greatness and they themselves could see it.
Okay. So now I want to go back a little bit to chapter 8. You're talking about your job interview at University of Maryland. And I
Ah,
thought that you had great response for a job interview question. I had to bookmark that in my Kindle so I could save that for another time in my life. You said that it was great. You mentioned about job interview questions and how you help promote everyone's brand, and everything's like a team sport.
mhm.
So I always want to know, we're going to change things up a bit. Could you share about a time when you were in a situation where not everyone was a team player?
Mm. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, that pretty much happened even at, you see, right after the mass layoff, right? As soon as there was a mass layoff, what happened? All the players changed. And as you probably read in my first book, Cybersecurity Leadership, I talk about how teamwork takes time. When you move, if there are 5 members of a team and you move one member, the whole team has to readjust. Well, if you change all 5 members, now you'll have mass chaos, right? Because nobody has any ability to work with anybody, and then nobody knows about teamwork. And then at that point, people had just been laid off, people are coming together, people don't know what they're supposed to do. Are we competing against each other and all that? So, oh yeah, I've seen that many, many times. And as a matter of fact, what happens is that that bleeds into the whole organization, and the organization suffers big time, the clients suffer big time, and there's a huge financial loss. So yeah, I have seen that many times, which is why I don't work in those kinds of environments.
I thoroughly appreciate reading 2 of your books now. Well, read one and listen to an audiobook for the first one. I want to
Okay.
know about Dr. Hasib, the author, the writer.
Okay.
So I want to know about your writing process. Like, do you have a special space? Are there certain times of the day that you like to write? Like, what goes on in the mind of Dr. Mansur Hasib when he's writing his distinguished works?
I think that each book is different. So the first book, I would say, literally took more than 20 years because there's a lot of chapters in the first book that got written as early as 1996. Because there's a chapter in that book where I talk about corporate alignment. Because what was happening during that time was that Baltimore Gas and Electric Company and Pepco was about to merge, and we had to bring the two cultures together. And then both companies were actually struggling with how do I bring this culture together. And I was one of those people that likes to study organizations and then help them develop that common culture. So I came up with a paper where I talked about the two different cultures that existed. And one of the things that I noticed that was wrong with both cultures, Pepco's culture was very, very centralized. But what happened was because of the centralization, it was very efficient, but a lot of support wasn't getting done. A lot of innovation wasn't getting done because too much structure stifles the process. On the other hand, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company was so decentralized that there was no corporate alignment. So I put that thing together that you see, at some point, you cannot have too much centralization. You got to have some corporate alignment. So I came up with a chapter. So what happens with that book was that as I was facing problems and seeing problems, I was writing about them. And then I was writing them as papers and papers. Eventually, I realized, wow, if I put all this together, now it can become a book. So that's kind of what happened. And I think that in 2013, after I finished my doctoral degree, something clicked in my brain also, because I think that after the doctoral degree, your brain does elevate to a different level. That's kind of what I felt, that I was being more circumspect, I was thinking a lot more. And so that is when I put together a lot of the previous work and put that thing into a cohesive thing. And I was also looking at the problems in the industry. And I said, this is the book that's needed because we have so much technology out there, but nobody's talking about the leadership and governance. And that's where things are failing. Because if you have proper leadership, I mean, this whole business of China attacking us or Russia or whoever, I mean, come on, we've got the brains. If all we need is the right leadership and the desire to do it, and we can do anything we want. So that's what happened with that book. With the second book, it was faster because what happened was I realized that people need the personal branding. And I started a workshop with that. Started workshop, but then I noticed people right now are getting laid off and all these things. And I said, oh my God, people don't realize that they need to get ownership of their personal brand. They need to have multiple sources of income and things like that. So what I did was I accelerated the production of this book by basically myself recognizing that I was working too hard for too many other organizations. They were making all the money. The people above me were making 2, 3 times my salary. In the meantime, I felt like I was being exploited because I could do their jobs, they couldn't do mine, yet they were making 2, 3 times my salary. To me, that didn't make any sense. If I can do somebody's job, that person should not be making 2, 3 times my salary and then dictating to me what I should be doing. So then I decided, okay, let me write this book, finish this book. So that's kind of what had happened. I think each book is different. There's another book that is in the works now for 15 years.
Okay.
And so hopefully that'll get done as soon as I'm finished with this one.
Okay. Now, I know you talk a lot in the book about promoting your brand online through social networking, social media to enhance your brand.
Mhm.
And of course, if the audience doesn't know, you and I follow each other on Twitter. And I do recall recently there was a day there was a lot of rain and you were having problems recording your audiobook.
Ah,
So I want to touch on that. You did give some very good tips in the new book about using your personal brand with podcasting and audiobooks and all of that. I just
Mhm.
want to know what's some other than the rain that day, what are some frustrating things for you when it comes to recording audiobooks?
ah, okay. This thing, the sound, okay? So I thought I had finished the whole recording. It was done. But then when I started going back, I just because I'm very finicky about quality control. So I started looking at the audio recording of every chapter and I noticed that the first 4 chapters sound very different. And I noticed, oh my God, I had used a different microphone and a different computer, and the quality was very different. So I said, I can't do this. So now I am re recording the first 4 chapters again. All right. So that's part of the frustration that audio recording, unless you have a very expensive studio and all that, and you have the time to devote to that, it's time consuming to maintain the quality. And I want to maintain the quality. So that was the other frustrating thing. And yes, sometimes I will have a neighbor's dog barking. So that's a frustrating thing. Sometimes, yeah, the rain.
Mhm.
So in audio recording, those are some issues. But technology is still much better today than it was, say, in 2015 when I did the audio recording of cybersecurity leadership. At that time, it was a slow process. It took me 6 months to do that one. I think this one is probably going to take about 2 months total. So that's not bad.
Okay. Okay. Wow, that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
So I also noticed on Twitter, not like I'm stalking you on Twitter or anything.
All right. All
You're
right.
just one of my favorite influencers to
Oh
follow.
no.
I see that you're very involved with the writing community and
Mhm.
you offer your advice to them. Uh, what would you say? I don't know, maybe someone already asked you, like, how do you handle criticism about your writing?
Ah, well, the best way, and I think I've addressed that in the current book. Some criticism is constructive, and if it's something that you can fix, you should. And I have. So when I did the first edition of Cybersecurity Leadership, I did get some criticism, and some was constructive. If it is destructive criticism, in other words, if it's a lot of opinions, like I hated the book, but they don't say why they hated the book, or they're saying they wanted to read about technology in this cybersecurity leadership book when I clearly say this book is not about technology, right? So there are some things you can't do anything about, but all the productive things, like one critique was that the first edition had a lot of typos and things like that. So I cleaned all that up. Somebody wanted an index, so I provided an index. So those things I think help a lot, and that did help me improve the quality. But the key is for an author never to engage with either positive or negative too much. Because if you notice that even if somebody puts a positive review, I don't like to go and put a comment, because if I do, then I would have to put a comment on every review because I want to treat everybody the same, right? So, and if I do it only on positive reviews but not on negative reviews, it'll look weird. The wisdom is that you don't engage on any of them. Let the community decide because even the best authors won't have 100% of the people like their work. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I
All
did
right.
find your indexes very helpful, and I even appreciated the links within the chapters, which took me so long to finish the book because I was clicking on almost like every link and going back and watching every reference to every video. It took a lot
Okay.
longer than I thought it was gonna take because I had to like see every single reference.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, so what else? Do you have any other questions or are we?
What do you like to read, or what audiobooks do you like to listen to?
I like to, I'm mostly into audiobooks. So mostly historical fictions. So one of my all-time favorites was Philippa Gregory and all those historical fictions from the Henry VIII era and all that. Because they make it so vivid. So I'm very much into the person acting out also. So I don't like one reader necessarily. If there are two or three readers and people are kind of play acting the roles and really making it come to life, I like those kinds of books rather than pure just reading or pure narration.
Okay. Well, I guess my last question for you would be, what would you like to share with anyone who may be new to your audience discovering your work for the very first time?
If they're discovering my work for the very first time, I would say go through it and then come on my show and tell me what you thought. This is the forum I have created for anyone to come and interact with me for 15 minutes or so and just chat because I love to know how it might be helping them or how they're using it and all that. So I appreciate the fact that you've been using the work and benefiting from it. And I absolutely love the fact that you came and chatted with me about it.
Yes, thank you. I mean, you cover so much in your books. Like you definitely have to go through it more than once because like you have to like my your head's about to explode with all the knowledge that you share. And it's just really wonderful. And I appreciate all that you do for everyone and all the mentees and your students.
Well, thank you very much, Angelina. Great to see you.